ever felt like you were being tested? Like really tested?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today's deep dive takes us into one of the most challenging stories in history.
Okay.
The biblical account of Abraham and Isaac.
Oh, yeah.
You find it in Genesis 22, a text that has sparked debate and interpretation for centuries.
Absolutely.
It's a tough one.
It is.
God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac as a burnt offering.
Wow.
This story isn't just ancient history, though. It's about faith,
Right.
obedience,
Yeah.
and the complex relationship between humans and the divine. We're going to uncover the details of this dramatic narrative and what it might mean for us today.
It's a fascinating story. While it's rooted in antiquity, it still speaks to us.
Yeah.
It delves into these profound questions about faith and obedience and the complex relationship between humans and the divine.
Absolutely. And I know you love biblical interpretation.
I do. It's one of my favorite things.
So we're going to really dig deep today.
Let's get into it.
So to set the stage, we have God commanding Abraham to make an unthinkable sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
His son, Isaac,
Right.
as a burnt offering. Just the thought of it.
It's hard to even imagine.
I know. Sends chills down my spine.
It's disturbing on so many levels.
It is.
But the text really emphasizes the emotional weight of this request.
Yeah.
You know, God doesn't just say sacrifice a son. He specifically says to Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love.
Oh, wow.
So this isn't just any sacrifice.
Yeah.
It strikes at the very heart of Abraham's world.
Yeah. And then what gets me is Abraham's immediate obedience.
Yeah.
He doesn't question, doesn't hesitate, sets out the very next morning.
Right.
I mean, for someone who's spent years studying these texts,
Yeah.
do you ever find yourself struck by the sheer intensity of that commitment?
Yeah, I mean, often. What adds another layer to this is the 3-day journey. Imagine 3 days of traveling, knowing what lies ahead. It's just ample time for reflection, doubt, even regret. But his resolve never wavers. And it forces us to consider what fueled such unwavering faith.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I've often wondered about that.
it's a great question.
That 3-day journey culminates in this moment of excruciating tension. They arrive at the designated place. Abraham builds the altar, prepares the wood, and then he binds Isaac and places him on the altar. I've read this passage countless times.
Yeah.
But that detail, the binding of Isaac,
Oh, yeah.
it never fails to make me pause.
I know what you mean.
Almost unbearable.
It's really disturbing.
It is.
But I think it underscores the gravity of the situation, doesn't it? And then Abraham's willingness to go through with it, to raise the knife to strike his own son.
I know.
It pushes his faith to the absolute limit. This is the climax of the test.
It is.
But it also raises a difficult question.
Yeah.
Where is the line between faith and fanaticism?
Well, that's a good question.
How do we reconcile blind obedience with a loving God? It's a question that has haunted theologians for centuries.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
If we were in Abraham's sandals, what would we do? It really makes you examine your own beliefs and convictions.
For sure.
But just as things seem to reach a point of no return, there's a sudden shift,
Really?
a dramatic intervention. At the very last moment, the angel of the Lord calls out from heaven, stopping Abraham just in time.
Oh, wow.
And this isn't just relief.
No.
It introduces a crucial divine perspective.
Yeah.
God acknowledges Abraham's fear, saying,
What?
now I know that you fear God.
That's huge.
This reveals the true purpose of this agonizing test.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the act itself. It was
Uh-huh.
about demonstrating the unwavering nature of Abraham's faith.
Interesting.
So right here we see the famous image of the ram caught in the thicket.
Oh, right.
God provides a substitute, highlighting his mercy and compassion. What's always fascinated me is the symbolism here. It's not just a random animal appearing. It carries a much deeper meaning, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It introduces the concept of substitutionary atonement, an idea that would resonate throughout theological history, particularly in Christian interpretations.
Okay.
The ram becomes a foreshadowing, a prefiguration of a greater sacrifice to come.
Wow, that's a connection I hadn't made before.
Yeah.
It really adds another dimension to the story.
It does.
And then, as if to solidify this moment, Abraham names the place Yahweh will provide.
Right.
Such a powerful image.
It is. That act of naming transforms the location into a monument, a lasting reminder that even in the face of the unthinkable, even when staring into the abyss of despair, God can be trusted to provide.
That's a powerful message. But after this intense emotional roller coaster, the story doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't.
There's an aftermath that I think is often overlooked.
Okay.
Tell me, what happens next?
Well, after this profound test of faith, God reaffirms his covenant with Abraham, promising him descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and blessings that will extend to all the nations of the earth.
Talk about a reward for faithfulness. It's almost overwhelming in its scope, isn't it? What strikes me, though, is the contrast. We go from this intensely personal, almost private moment of sacrifice to this sweeping declaration of God's favor on a global scale.
That's a really astute observation. It's almost as if the story is expanding outwards, going from this microcosm of Abraham and Isaac to a macrocosm that encompasses all of humanity. And it kind of begs the question, how do we reconcile those two perspectives, the intensely personal and the universally significant?
Right, and how do we even begin to grasp the concept of blessings for all the nations? What does it even mean in a practical sense? Is it about material prosperity, spiritual enlightenment, political power?
I think that ambiguity is part of what makes this covenant so fascinating. It invites multiple interpretations, allowing each individual in each generation to wrestle with its implications. Some see it as a promise of material wealth and dominance, while others interpret it as a call to spiritual leadership and ethical responsibility.
It reminds me of those debates about whether the Bible should be interpreted literally or metaphorically.
Right.
And I guess it depends on your perspective, right?
Exactly.
But going back to your point about the personal versus the universal,
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does this story, with its grand promises and epic scope, connect back to the individual listener? To someone like you or me grappling with our own everyday challenges?
That's where the story becomes so powerful. Because even though it deals with these grand themes of covenant and destiny, it's ultimately rooted in the human experience of being tested. We all face those moments of decision, those crossroads where we're forced to confront our fears, our doubts, and our deepest convictions.
Absolutely. And I think that's why this story continues to resonate across cultures and throughout history. It speaks to something universal, something that transcends specific religious beliefs. It's about the courage to face the unknown, to trust in something beyond ourselves, even when logic and reason tell us otherwise.
And it's not always about grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices like Abraham's. Sometimes the tests we face are much smaller, more subtle, but they can be just as challenging, just as demanding of our inner strength and resilience.
Like making that tough decision to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's unpopular, or holding on to hope in the face of personal loss or tragedy. It's about finding that inner reservoir of faith, that wellspring of strength that allows us to keep going even when we feel like giving up.
Exactly. And what's so remarkable about the story of Abraham and Isaac is that it doesn't offer easy answers or simple solutions. It doesn't shy away from the complexity and ambiguity of faith.
In a way that makes it even more relevant to our lives, don't you think? Because we don't always have all the answers. We're often walking through life with a mix of faith and doubt, certainty and uncertainty, and sometimes the most we can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other, trusting that even if we can't see the path ahead, there's something guiding us, something supporting us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And what strikes me is that even after this intense experience, the story doesn't end with some grand revelation or dramatic transformation. Abraham and Isaac simply return to their lives carrying the weight of their experience, but also the blessings that come with unwavering faith.
It's almost like a quiet reminder that life goes on, even after profound spiritual encounters. We integrate these experiences into our life, carrying the lessons and the wisdom with us as we move forward. There's no fanfare, no pronouncements, just the quiet continuation of life forever changed by the journey.
And that, I think, is a powerful message in itself. It suggests that faith isn't about avoiding challenges or escaping the complexities of life. It's about how we face those challenges, how we navigate those complexities, and how we emerge from them hopefully stronger and more resilient than before.
That's a really profound insight. And makes me wonder, what are some of the ways we see this story reflected in our own lives, our own experiences? Have you ever had a moment where you felt like your faith was truly tested, where you had to dig deep and find that inner strength to keep going?
I think I have. It's interesting how this story, while thousands of years old, still feels so relevant.
Doesn't it? It's like a mirror reflecting our own struggles with faith and doubt, obedience and questioning.
You know what's fascinating to me here?
Right.
Is that the story doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't explicitly tell us why God would ask for such a sacrifice or what the ultimate meaning of the test was.
It's true.
It leaves us with questions, which I think is part of its enduring power.
Absolutely.
Because in a way, it mirrors our own lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
We're often faced with situations that we don't fully understand, choices that test our limits, push us to the edge of our comfort zone.
Yeah, sure.
And like Abraham, we have to grapple with uncertainty, doubt, and fear.
I think we do, yeah.
But even in the midst of that struggle, the story offers a glimmer of hope.
Does it?
Yeah. It suggests that even in the darkest moments, when we're pushed to our absolute limits, there might be something greater at work. A force that sustains us and guides us, even when we can't see it.
It's like that saying, leap and the net will appear.
Exactly.
Sometimes we just have to take that step of faith, even if we don't know what's on the other side.
Right. And it's worth noting that the story doesn't focus on the outcome of the test.
Oh, really?
It's not about whether Isaac lived or died.
Oh.
It's about Abraham's unwavering willingness to follow God's command, even when it seemed impossible, even when it went against every human instinct.
That's powerful. It's not about the destination, but about the journey itself, the choices we make along the way, that inner transformation that takes place when we surrender to something bigger than ourselves.
I think that's right. And that brings us back to the central question this story poses. Is this a story about blind obedience? Or is it about something more profound? Is it about surrendering to a higher purpose, even when we don't understand it?
As we wrap up this deep dive into the binding of Isaac, I think that's the question I want to leave with you. Imagine being in Abraham's shoes. What would it say about your faith? And how might this ancient story inform the choices you make, the challenges you face, and the path you forge in your own life? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic.